The Cassini control room at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory hummed with anticipation. Dozens of screens displayed the probe's final approach into Saturn's atmosphere, each monitor casting a pale blue glow across the faces of anxious scientists. Dr. Michael Reeves stood at his station, eyes fixed on the atmospheric readings. After 20 years studying potential extraterrestrial life, he'd learned to expect disappointment. But something about today felt different. "Beginning final descent," Ethan Sparks Monroe announced from the engineering station. As Cassini's lead engineer, his voice carried both pride and grief. "All systems nominal." The main screen showed Saturn's atmosphere in stunning detail. Swirling storms in burnt sienna and deep ochre, electrical discharges flickering like distant lightning. Cassini's sensors penetrated deeper into the gas layers, sending back data that would be its final legacy. "Signal strength holding at 94%, a technician called out, receiving primary telemetry. Then it happened. In the midst of routine data, something impossible appeared. "What the hell?" Sparks leaned forward, adjusting his controls. "Are you seeing this?" Through the murky gas layers, something moved. Not with the chaotic motion of storms, but with purpose. The sensors detected a structure, massive, organic, shifting beneath Saturn's clouds. It's enormous," Dr. Reeves breathed, watching the readings spike. "The scale, it must be thousands of kilometers across." "That's impossible," someone muttered. "Has to be interference." But Sparks wasn't listening. His eyes were locked on a repeating signal buried in the transmission. A pattern too regular, too precise to be natural. Before he could analyze it further, Cassini's signal began to break up. "We're losing her," he called out, fingers flying across his keyboard. "Wait, there's something else coming through." The final transmission burst through the static, a sequence of data unlike anything they'd seen before. Then the screen went white. When it cleared, Cassini was gone, disintegrated in Saturn's crushing atmosphere. "Log it as atmospheric interference," the mission director announced after a moment of silence. "Good work, everyone. Cassini's mission is complete." But Sparks sat motionless at his station, staring at the pattern he'd managed to save. The last pulse of data suggested something that shouldn't be possible. A giant organic structure, alive and aware, dwelling in the depths of Saturn. As the room erupted in bittersweet applause, he quietly began copying the data. He knew that soon, someone would come to bury this discovery. But he'd seen it, and he would remember. The official NASA report landed on Dr. Reeves's desk with a dull thud. "Atmospheric interference and signal degradation in Cassini's terminal phase." The title alone made his jaw clench. His office had become a war room of sorts. Every wall was covered with printouts from Cassini's final moments. Spectral analyses, signal patterns, atmospheric readings. Red string connected seemingly unrelated data points, a web of connections that seemed mad to outsiders, but made perfect sense to him. "They're burying it," Sparks declared, pacing the cramped space. His usually pristine lab coat was wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes betraying sleepless nights. "Just like they buried your research years ago." Michael rubbed his temples. The patterns were undeniable. The same structured frequencies he'd detected in his early career, before the ridicule drove him to safer research. "The signal shows clear signs of organization. These aren't random atmospheric effects. Look at this sequence." Sparks pointed to a particular chart. "It repeats with exact precision every 83.7 minutes. Natural phenomena don't do that." Their obsession had not gone unnoticed. Colleagues avoided them in the hallways. Whispers followed them in the cafeteria. Poor Sparks cracking up like Reeves did. But they couldn't stop. The data consumed their days and haunted their nights. They'd seen something impossible, a vast organic structure hidden in Saturn's depths, and a signal that hinted at intelligence beyond human comprehension. "We need more computing power," Sparks muttered, scribbling equations. "I'm building a private array, something they can't control or shut down. That could cost you your career," Michael warned. "My career?" Sparks laughed bitterly. We've discovered the greatest secret in human history, and you're worried about careers. Look at these energy signatures. They're ordered, structured, like thoughts painted across an entire planet. Michael studied the printouts again. The patterns did seem eerily regular, reminiscent of the cosmic signals he'd discovered years ago. Those findings had nearly destroyed him. Now here they were again, stronger and clearer. Even if we're right, he said carefully, what can we do? The official investigation is closed. The data's been classified. Sparks smiled, a feverish gleam in his eyes. We watch. We wait. Whatever Cassini found, it's still out there, and when it reaches out again, we'll be ready. 5 years passed. The world had changed dramatically. 2 different presidents had cycled through the White House, each with their own stance on space exploration. NASA's budget had been slashed, then restored, then slashed again. Private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin had taken the lead in space exploration, while government agencies focused on deeper, darker projects away from public view. Marcus Vogel's night shift at NASA's Deep Space Network facility was supposed to be routine. Monitor the arrays, log the data, try not to fall asleep. Instead, every alarm in the complex was screaming. "This can't be right," he muttered, fingers flying across his keyboard. The pattern on his screen was impossible, an exact match for a signal recorded 5 years ago when Cassini had plunged into Saturn's atmosphere. His hand shook as he dialed the emergency number. 2 rings, then a gruff voice. Foster. "Colonel, this is Vogel at the DSN facility. Sir, you need to see this." Within an hour, Colonel Alan Foster strode into the facility, his military bearing at odds with the chaos erupting around him. Teams of analysts rushed between terminals, shouting numbers and confirmations. "Talk to me," Foster commanded. "The signal, sir." Vogel pulled up comparative analyses. "It's identical to Cassini's final transmission. Not similar, identical. Every frequency, every modulation. But there's more." He lowered his voice. "It's coming from Saturn, but also everywhere. Every array we have is picking it up." Foster's jaw tightened. He'd read the classified reports from 5 years ago, seen the things NASA had chosen to bury. Who else knows? I followed protocol. Minimal staff, no external communications. "But sir," Vogel glanced nervously at his screens. "The signal's changing, growing stronger, like it's learning to broadcast more clearly." Through the facility's windows, Saturn glowed as a distant point of light. The same dark patch that Cassini had discovered seemed larger now, visible even through Earth-based telescopes. "Lock down the facility," Foster ordered. "No one in or out without my direct authorization. And get me everything we have on Dr. Michael Reeves and Ethan Monroe." As the colonel left, Vogel turned back to his monitors. The signal pulsed with mechanical precision, but something about its rhythm seemed almost alive. And in the quiet hours before dawn, he began to feel it, a matching pulse in his head, a rhythm that whispered of vast, dark spaces and patient, ancient thoughts. The door that Cassini had discovered 5 years ago wasn't just open anymore. Something was coming through. Dr. Michael Reeves found the unmarked envelope under his office door one Tuesday morning. Inside was a single printed image, a spectrographic analysis that made his blood run cold. The pattern was unmistakable, identical to the ones that had ended his career years ago. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You've seen it." Sparks' voice, tense and excited. "Where did you get this?" "It's back, Mike, the signal, but bigger this time. They can't hide it anymore. Too many stations are picking it up simultaneously." Michael studied the printout. The structured frequencies were clearer now, stronger. "Why show me this? I'm not exactly in NASA's good graces these days." "Because you were right. 5 years ago, when you said Cassini found something alive in Saturn. Check your email. I'm sending coordinates. Come alone." The desert facility looked abandoned at first glance, but as Michael approached, he saw the sophisticated equipment hidden beneath camouflage netting. Sparks had been busy. My own private listening post. Sparks emerged from a makeshift control room. Been monitoring Saturn for 5 years. Building this cost me everything. Savings, career, marriage. But look. The screens showed real-time data from Saturn. The signal pulsed across every display, stronger than ever. It's not just broadcasting anymore, Sparks explained. It's reaching out, trying to connect. And there's more. He pulled up an image of Saturn, the dark patch Cassini found. It's growing. Michael leaned closer. The anomaly beneath Saturn's clouds had expanded, now visible even through Earth-based telescopes. We need to understand what it's trying to say, Michael said, before they try to shut it down again. That's why I called you. You're the only one who might comprehend what we're dealing with, but we don't have much time. They're already moving to contain it. They! Colonel Foster, NASA's new security chief. He's forming a team, trying to control the situation. But you can't control this, Mike. You can only listen and learn. Marcus Vogel hadn't left his workstation in 72 hours. Empty coffee cups and energy drink cans littered his desk, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at the endless stream of data. Look at this pattern, he muttered to himself. It's not random. There's a rhythm. The main screen displayed a visualization of the signal's frequency patterns. They pulsed in regular intervals, but with subtle variations that seemed almost organic. It's a heartbeat, he whispered. Then louder. It's a heartbeat. Colonel Foster appeared behind him. Explain. The signal. It's biological in nature. Vogel's fingers flew across his keyboard. These patterns match cardiovascular rhythms, but scaled up to something unimaginably large, like the pulse of a living being that measures time in centuries instead of seconds. He pulled up a comparison chart. See this base sequence? It repeats every 83.7 minutes. But within that are smaller rhythms, harmonics. Like we're hearing the circulatory system of something vast. Are you saying Saturn has a pulse? Not Saturn itself, something in Saturn. Something that's been dormant until now. And it's not just broadcasting anymore, it's trying to synchronize. Synchronize with what? With us. Vogel lowered his voice. I've been having dreams. The signal. It gets into your head. When I sleep, I see things. Vast spaces, moving shadows, and something watching us, learning from every transmission we make. Foster's expression hardened. You need rest. No, I'm close to something. The dreams. They're helping me understand. The signal isn't just data. It's trying to attune our consciousness to its frequency. Like a mother's heartbeat regulating an infant's. The JPL conference room was packed with scientists and military personnel, all staring at the massive screen displaying Saturn's latest images. Dr. Reeves stood with Sparks and Vogel, watching the swirling clouds with new understanding. There, Sparks pointed. Watch the dark patch. Beneath Saturn's ochre clouds, something shifted. Not with the chaotic motion of storms, but with purpose, like muscle flexing under skin. The readings are off the scale, Vogel announced. Energy signatures unlike anything we've recorded before, and look at the pattern analysis. It's organized, structured. Michael stepped forward. It's not just moving, it's growing. What we're seeing, it's an organism. But not like anything we've encountered before. This entity exists on a planetary scale. And Cassini woke it up, Sparks added. The room fell silent as new data flowed across the screens. Energy readings, atmospheric analyses, gravitational measurements, all showing patterns that defied conventional physics. It's becoming more active, Vogel said, his voice shaking. The signal, it's evolving, becoming more complex, like it's learning from every probe we send, every transmission we make. As if to confirm his words, the dark patch beneath Saturn's clouds pulsed. The signal's rhythm changed, becoming more structured, more intentional. Like a child learning language, Michael mused. But what happens when it learns enough to truly communicate? Foster stepped forward, his military bearing tense. That's what we need to find out. And control. Control? Sparks laughed. You can't control this. It's older than our species, older than Earth itself, maybe. We're not the ones in control here. The lights flickered, and when they stabilized, every screen showed the same image, a vast structure beneath Saturn's clouds, moving with undeniable purpose. The entity wasn't just alive, it was awake. "This stops now." Colonel Foster slammed his fist on the conference table, making the coffee cups rattle. "Whatever's happening up there, it ends today." Sparks had almost been escorted out of the facility an hour ago, saved only by Dr. Reeves's desperate intervention. Now they sat in Foster's office, surrounded by classified reports and satellite imagery. "You can't stop it," Sparks argued, his voice hoarse. "You don't understand what we're dealing with." "What I understand," Foster replied, "is that an unknown entity is broadcasting signals across our entire planet, signals that are affecting our personnel. That makes it a national security threat." "It's not a threat," Dr. Reeves interjected. "It's a discovery, the most important discovery in human history. If you shut down this investigation..." "I'll do whatever's necessary to protect Earth," Foster cut him off. "I'm ordering a complete communications blackout. Every deep space array, every monitoring station, shut them all down." Sparks leapt to his feet. "You'll blind us. We need to study it, understand it." "Mr. Monroe, you're this close to being arrested for breaching security protocols. The only reason you're still here is Dr. Reeves's reputation." "What's left of it?" Michael said quietly. "Colonel, please. Think about what we're dealing with. This entity has already demonstrated intelligence far beyond our comprehension. Do you really think shutting off our equipment will stop it from reaching us?" The room's lights flickered, as if emphasizing his point. The entity's signal pulsed through every electronic device, growing stronger by the hour. "I have my orders," Foster said. "This project is now under military jurisdiction. Anyone who speaks about this outside this room will be charged with treason." The first signs were subtle. Unusual tidal patterns along the Pacific coast, unexplained seismic readings that matched no known fault lines, weather systems forming impossible shapes in the upper atmosphere. In the JPL control room, Vogel tracked the growing chaos. "The resonance patterns are spreading," he announced, pointing to global weather maps. "Look at these cloud formations. They're mimicking Saturn's atmospheric patterns." Michael studied the data with growing unease. Temperature fluctuations, electromagnetic disturbances, even gravity itself seemed to be developing new rhythms that match the entity's pulse. "The oceans," Sparks called from his station. "Every major current is synchronizing with the signal's frequency. This isn't just interference anymore, it's restructuring Earth's natural systems." Reports flooded in from around the world. Aurora-like phenomena appearing at impossible latitudes, compass needles spinning wildly, electronic devices activating without power. "It's changing everything," Vogel whispered. "Not just our technology. The planet itself is starting to resonate with the signal." Foster stood before the main display, watching his ordered world dissolve into chaos. "There has to be a way to stop this." "Stop it?" Sparks laughed hollowly. "Look at the data. The entity isn't just affecting our world, it's synchronizing Earth's fundamental forces with its own patterns. The real question is, what are we becoming?" A new alarm sounded. The main screen showed a massive electromagnetic disturbance over the Pacific Ocean, forming patterns that exactly match the structures beneath Saturn's clouds. "Look at this," Dr. Reeves pointed to historical Saturn observations. "The changes didn't start with Cassini. They've been happening for centuries. We just couldn't see them." The team gathered around his workstation, studying decades of atmospheric data, subtle shifts in Saturn's storms, gradual changes in its magnetic field, all moving towards some inevitable awakening. "It's been warming up," Michael explained, "like a massive organism slowly rising from hibernation. Cassini didn't wake it up. It was already awakening. We just happened to be there when it opened its eyes." Vogel nodded frantically. "Yes, we've been measuring it wrong. Its consciousness operates on geological time. What seems sudden to us has been building for thousands of years." The main screen showed new data from Saturn. The dark patches had spread, covering nearly half the planet now. And the structures beneath, they were becoming clearer. Vast, organic formations that defied biology as humans understood it. It's not just one organism, Michael realized. The entire planet is its body. The storms are its breath, the magnetic field its nervous system, and now it's teaching Earth to be the same, Vogel finished. The weather patterns, the seismic changes, the electromagnetic disturbances. It's like an embryo developing under the influence of a parent's DNA. Foster gripped the back of a chair. So what you're saying is, Earth is becoming like Saturn, Michael said. Or rather, it's becoming a suitable environment for whatever type of life exists there. And we're changing with it. The lights flickered again, longer this time. In the darkness, they could all feel it. A vast, patient consciousness pressing against their minds, reshaping their thoughts like clay in ancient hands. Enough speculation. Foster stood before the Joint Chiefs in the Pentagon's secure briefing room. We need action. I propose a direct intervention. What kind of intervention? The chairman asked. A coordinated strike. Every nuclear weapon in our arsenal directed at the source of the signal within Saturn. If we can't stop the transmission, we eliminate what's sending it. That's insane. Dr. Reeves burst through the security doors. Sparks closed behind. Guards moved to intercept them, but Foster waved them back. Let them speak, the chairman ordered, studying the two scientists. You can't attack it, Michael continued, catching his breath. The entity exists on a scale we can barely comprehend. Our entire nuclear arsenal would be like throwing pebbles at a mountain. At least pebbles can start an avalanche, Foster countered. Look at what's happening to our world. The mass hysteria, the environmental changes, the technological disruptions. We have to do something. The room's screens showed live feeds from around the globe, weather patterns spiraling into impossible formations, oceans moving against their natural currents, the sky itself seeming to pulse with new rhythms. If you attack it, Sparks warned, you'll provoke something beyond our control. This entity, it's not our enemy. It's trying to communicate. Communicate? Foster laughed bitterly. It's reshaping our planet, changing our people. How many more have to die before we act? Those deaths are from our resistance, Michael argued. We're fighting the transformation instead of trying to understand it. The entity, it thinks on a planetary scale. Individual human lives are too small for it to perceive. Vogel made the breakthrough at 3:27 a.m., his hands shaking as he decoded the last piece of Cassini's final transmission. Look at this, he called to Michael and Sparks. The pattern. It wasn't just data, it was a key. His fingers flew across the keyboard, reconstructing the signal's complex layers. The main screen filled with a new image, clearer, more detailed than anything they'd seen before. Beneath Saturn's clouds, a vast structure became visible. At its center, something that looked horrifyingly like an eye stared back at them. My God, Michael whispered. It's been watching us, all this time. Not just watching, Vogel said. Teaching. Look at these frequencies. They match human brainwave patterns exactly, but only after months of exposure to the signal. It's been preparing us, Sparks realized. Everything since Cassini, it's been gradually teaching our minds how to perceive its reality. Foster arrived, drawn by the commotion. He stared at the image, his military bearing cracking. What are we looking at? The truth, Michael answered simply. What Cassini really saw before it died. The entity wanted us to find this now, when we're ready to understand it. The eye-like structure pulsed, and every electronic device in the facility responded in perfect synchronization. It began at dawn. The wave reached Earth first as a subtle disturbance in the electromagnetic field. Then every electronic device on the planet activated simultaneously, displaying the same pulsing pattern. In the JPL control room, Michael, Sparks and Vogel watched their instruments go haywire. Foster sat slumped in a chair, his earlier certainty shattered. The resonance is complete, Vogel announced, checking readings. The signal, it's everywhere now. In our devices, in the atmosphere, in the Earth itself. What's happening? Foster asked, his voice barely a whisper. What it always planned, Michael answered. The entity isn't just communicating anymore, it's changing the fundamental electromagnetic balance of our solar system. Through the windows, they could see the sky transforming. Colours that shouldn't exist rippled through the atmosphere. The very air seemed to pulse with new awareness. My God, Sparks breathed. It's not just Earth. Look at the readings from the other planets. The waves spread outward, touching every world in the solar system. As communications went dark, the team realized they'd triggered something irreversible. The entity wasn't just awake anymore, it was reaching out. And in doing so, it had changed everything. Their planet, their technology, perhaps even consciousness itself. The last thing they saw before every screen went dark was Saturn's eye, watching its handiwork unfold across the solar system. Humanity's next chapter had begun, whether they were ready or not.